It's always one or the other. It's like we've won 3 games in a row and we're going to the Super Bowl and we lost a game to the Ravens. And we're like, okay, who are the good quarterbacks in this year's draft?
It's so true. Yeah, that really is true.
Welcome to That's Good Broncos podcast. Special guest joining us. I think it'll be down below. It might be up below. I forget what my template is.
You do down, I'll do up.
Okay, there we go. Dave Dameshek.
What's happening, fellas?
Known Steelers fan. We're going to get an inside look at the Steelers today. Thank you for joining us, Dave. You've got a few podcasts. I think you should promote them right now before a bunch of people stop watching the show.
Because of my upcoming words and critiques of my team, your team, and otherwise.
Will and I, audience retention, we haven't mastered that yet.
Yeah, well, I have no charisma to contribute here, so I guess we're kind of stuck.
Stop watching.
I do the -3 podcast twice a week, and I do the Extra Points podcast twice a week. I encourage you, nay, demand that you go and subscribe to both. Please, as soon as you finish listening to this. Both are good times.
Will and I highly recommend. I wanted to ask you, how are those going? Because you went from the NFL Network to doing your own thing. And we've been I've been living on the flip side of that, where I've been doing my own thing forever, trying to aspire to do bigger things. But now it feels like doing podcasts and YouTube is the thing to just keep doing. Are you finding that it has, freed you up to kind of talk about football more the way you want to? Or I don't know. I was just curious to your thoughts on making that switch.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really bang my head on the ceiling too much about being critical of teams and getting pushback from the league. I will say Mickey Loomis did once call one of my bosses to say, because I was doing something called the Shame Report at the time. And I said shame, but it was always ironic. It wasn't like I was like, that team stinks. Shame on them for stinking. It was more in the line of hey, Russell Wilson isn't 6 feet tall and he's still good. And that takes away an excuse that I have that I'm just not big enough to be in the NFL. And he's showing off by disproving that. And he's a jerk for doing that. Shame on you, Russell Wilson. Nevertheless, Mickey Loomis did not like me saying shame. He said, why? I don't understand saying shame on pro football players. So anyway, the irony was lost on him. But outside of that, no, I never really got a whole lot of pushback. I'm not, I don't work blue that much, really. At the end of the day, I don't work blue enough to get in trouble generally. But yes, it's bad. But to answer your question, it's going great. It's awesome. It's lots of fun. I get to deal with my pals, one of whom is Cousin Sal, who's running the ship. You probably know Cousin Sal from making his picks on Fox Sports and on the Kimmel Show and all of that. And Kevin Hench and a bunch of other good fun people. So yes, it's been delightful as far as that goes.
I went back and I listened to the -3 podcast from Friday, and it was a great show. It's a great show. However, you briefly did your favorite LaCroix flavors, the Win Play Show.
Yeah, I got one.
I love LaCroix.
I got a generic one, but
got it. The generic.
I actually got a bubbly here on my
I know what you're going to go into, but right out of the gate, bubbly, I don't want to lose any sponsors for you, but if you put up a strong enough fight, maybe will earn you one from bubbly. Too much flavor, generally speaking, with the bubblies. I like a nice lean flavor with my seltzer. That's one of the reasons I favor it over your traditional can fare.
I got to agree with that.
I'm drinking a robust red over here, and you like it a little lean. That's okay.
I like to go a little light on the flavor, you see, because
so you like to drink about 10 at a time.
I do. What do you think of Pamplemousse? That's where I'm sticking my neck out a little bit.
Yeah, that's where we part ways. I'm a big fan. I like lime, but even better, key lime. That's number one for me. And I didn't hear any mention of key lime, so I'm a little disappointed.
My wife's a big fan of the pamplemousse, so I got to support pamplemousse for sure.
That's excellent. I like the sound of that. I'll say that key lime, as in general, I'm resentful towards. I don't know why that is. It's not like a restaurant just has infinite options with the desserts that they can throw out there. So I'm upset when it's like, hey, among our 3 or 5 desserts, one of them is key lime pie. I don't understand. What kind of restaurant are you trying to run here? You've made a poor decision.
How's that going to outsell chocolate lava cake?
There you go. That's right.
Or even just any other kind of pie, apple, banana cream. Those are the only 2 pies. Cherry.
Well, I could go. We could go on and on. We could do the whole. By the way, pamplemousse is grapefruit, and grapefruit is a fruit that I've gone at great length about in the past.
Oh, I think I responded to one of your tweets about grapefruit because I got into grapefruit just last year.
Did you really?
Yeah, I never ate it, and then I had a really good one, and then I had another really good one. And then I had a bad one, and I go, oh, you got to find the perfectly ripe grapefruits. And then I started making like whiskey drinks with them. So I'm a grapefruit supporter, actually. And I think your argument was you can't trust a fruit that you have to put sugar on.
Well, I mean, how good is it?
Yeah.
I like when people want to fight me about grapefruit, and I'm like, you put sugar on it.
Yeah.
I can put sugar on a lot of things and make it taste good. It's sort of like that. The number one culprit with this is lobster. Lobster gets all this credit. People will pay whatever the fancy restaurant asks you to pay for it just for the pleasure of eating that sweet meat. But never would they ever put a lobster out there without the drawn butter, aka the true star. Drawn butter, lobster. Yeah. Oh, we put it in the drawn butter. Dip. You know what else tastes good when you dip it in drawn butter? Everything else.
Put a cheeseburger in that butter and watch somebody's mind explode.
People are too,
and then you get resentful for all the money you've wasted on lobster over
the years. Butter.
They're too painful to just drink drawn butter, and thus we had to dive into the ocean to justify it.
Yeah, they need to serve like little shooters of the butter alongside with the lobster.
Yeah, a little shot glass.
We won't know really until we try. Maybe a forward thinking restaurateur will listen to us today and say, like, I'll see how many people are interested in just the drawn butter straight. And maybe people that will become a thing. And we'll have invented this today. Man,
this show is just about creating new things. I did want to talk about some controversy that happened here in Broncos country. Just this last week, hot topic, Vic Fangio versus John Harbaugh. Dave has an interesting take that I think Broncos fans will appreciate. I said I liked the Harbaugh call. Like, I think that's the kind of thing a coach does for his team that keeps his team excited playing for him. Kind of the opposite of anything Urban Meyer's done the last couple of weeks. But you're on Vic Fangio's side here.
Well, yes, with this asterisk, I agree philosophically with you. That's fine, and all the tough guys out there who say you don't like it, stop it. The issue is that Harbaugh had his cake, hot lava cake or otherwise, and ate it too by getting to be that tough guy and continuing this thing, and that's what the Ravens are about, running the ball and all that. Great, then you have every right to do that. The wisdom of doing it when your offensive line and your run game is banged up, that's a questionable call, except here's how he had it both ways, Harbaugh. If you watch both sides of the line of scrimmage on the play, the players are kind of like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, even after the play ends, they're kind of like, does that count? Were we really running a play there? He just kind of snapped the ball and he runs for it. It was like a half-assed play. And so Fangio, I think, is rightly pissed because, who's to say that, like, okay, you want to get this? Then we will try to stop you. That's the issue. The Broncos weren't in a position to try and stop it because they're like, wait, what the hell are we doing right now?
Right.
Like, you could tell by their literal body position. They're upright. Like, oh, maybe Fangio, like, oh, you're going to line up and do this, Harbaugh? All right, then we too shall line up.
Yeah.
And we shall try to smack the ball carrier as hard as we possibly can.
That's a great point that I didn't think of because I was too focused on other mistakes that had happened in the game. But if we could go back and redo that play and let the Broncos call a real defensive play to stop it, I think there's a good chance the Ravens don't pick up 3 yards there, because the one thing the Broncos did well all day was contain the run. Yes, the Ravens eventually got the 100, but it took them a while to get there. So I think that's
right.
point.
And I think a big issue as we connect the Broncos' last foe with their upcoming foe, 2-3 weeks ago, Deontay Johnson of the Steelers gets hurt on a meaningless last play of the game and then misses the following game. You know, it wouldn't be
can't happen.
I get that. I get that the Charm City football fans find it charming. Like, you should have stopped us then, Broncos, if you don't want it to happen to you. If they do line up and anybody from the Ravens gets dinged, then it would not be cute stuff at all.
Yeah,
because because Harbaugh insisted on doing it. I get the spirit of it. I'm all for Harbaugh doing it, but under these circumstances, as wrecked as the O-line is specifically, it really is kind of like, what are you thinking, man?
Yeah, the players, Lamar Jackson, he had the fourth down play against the Chiefs where he's like, oh, yeah, we got to go for it. It's not like Lamar Jackson came up to him on the sideline. We got to get that record. It was Jim Harbaugh or John Harbaugh, whatever. And it's just a vanity play. And I am a keeper of the unwritten rules. I love the unwritten rules so much that I think we should actually write them down and make them official rules. And it offended my sensibilities. I know Brandon was okay with it, but it took me some time. I wept in my room quietly.
I hear Perna because I know Perna is a sincere fan, because when people get swept up in that kind of thing, like that last play of the game stuff, it's like, who gives a crap? I only have so much spirit and energy to give. I can't lament that play. I'm more upset about the plays when the game was still in the balance that have me upset. Not that jive at the end of it. I'm tired. I completely get where you're coming from on that one, Perna.
Yeah, I harped on Albert O dropping this pass in the game that really hurt the Broncos. And when you think about the Broncos and Steelers right now, they're very, very similar. Two good defenses. I assume the Steelers defense is still good. I know it's been a little dicey when Watt got hurt. Question marks at the quarterback position. The Broncos, when Teddy's healthy, he's good, but he's going through concussion protocol this week. Might be Drew Lock, might be Teddy. We don't know yet. And we've got a bunch of talent at the receiver positions. Everybody keeps telling us how talented they are, and it's just we can't put together big games with them. And last year, the Steelers suffered from a lot of drops. This year, the Broncos have had some key drops. It hasn't cost the Broncos until this last week because they played bad teams. And question marks, I would say, on the the offensive line now for Denver after some injuries. So these are very similar teams with just reverse records, 1-3, 3-1, based on who they've played. So I need to know how bad the Steelers really are. So when I do my prediction episode this week, I know which angle to lean into. Because they're a mystery to me.
The final score probably comes down somewhere in the range of like 5-3 or maybe 3-2 or something like that. I don't anticipate a ton of offense in Heinz Field on Sunday. In broad strokes, and in fact, this connects. You compare the two franchises. I think the best comp, at least the optimists from January till September in Pittsburgh, the architects of the team, Kevin Colbert on down, probably eyeballed the 2015 Broncos formula that got him a Lombardi trophy.
Yeah.
And said, let's try to replicate that. They have a quarterback who, Hall of Fame, all that kind of stuff, but ain't what he used to be. But you can ride the defense. You can bang away on the ground. You have some talented playmakers for the QB to feed. And obviously, like we say, they wound up winning the Lombardi doing it that way. This Steelers team has been undone more than anything. The offensive line has been an atrocity. I will say it's getting a little bit better. It's getting a little, as you could tell.
Next time.
I think the premise was more specifically with the Steelers this year was this offensive line is a misery because it's so young, but we think that it'll round into shape. In the meantime, the defense has to carry us. The football gods saw fit to think otherwise. And, it's not a coincidence that they lost at home to two teams that they probably should beat, the Raiders, even with their hot start. They should have. They probably, I would say, would win at least one of those two games against the Raiders and then the Bengals if they have a healthy TJ Watt, if Stephon Tuitt had been available. Joe Hayden missed one of those games. So, Pete, we all fall prey to the same thing of like looking at another team more so than our own and saying like, what's up with that defense? Shouldn't they be great? It's like, just because they're wearing the same logo on the side of their hat as the would-be starters doesn't mean they perform at that level. It's nice to say next man up and standard remains the standard, but those are sayings. Those aren't actually applicable to any physical deeds that the individuals are capable of pulling off out there. So anyway, I think the defense has been undone by some injuries. It's getting a little bit closer to healthy, you would hope, from a Pittsburgh side of things. And the offensive line has gotten better, but Roethlisberger, specifically in the Green Bay game, was the liability. You couldn't point at the offensive line or really much of anything else. I mean, the blown field goal block that went for a touchdown, maybe that changes the second half radically, and the Steelers somehow pulled that one off like they did in Buffalo in week 1. But yeah, I mean, Roethlisberger just flat out missed throws that a pro level QB must hit for his team to win with any consistency. And so far he hasn't. Does that turn around this week? Difficult to say. I mean, you're guessing. All the cynics say, no, it's over for him. Clearly, I have a hunch. Maybe it's 18 years worth of positive results for the most part. But I do think that there is a short-term rise for Roethlisberger. I do think he has a shot at putting together a couple of nice games here against the Broncos and the Seahawks.
Let's just hope it's 1 week out. 1 week away from that. You brought up another point that I wanted to ask before I forget, and the Steelers were screwed by a bad call in that game. It's a great special teams play. And Will and I have talked about this a handful of times already this season. Is NFL officiating as bad as it appears to be, or do we kind of just forget every offseason that NFL officiating feels really bad through the first half of the season? Like, I started looking, I'm doing a video on the Lions and how many times they have been just ruined by bad calls. And I started to realize, like, going back through my channel, it's like I'm making videos about bad officiating every year and sort of forgetting it. What's your take on the level of officiating right now?
It sucks, but it always sucks. The idea that we're supposed to find the human error, like, hey, part of the sport, whatever sport you're talking about, like, hey, just the same as a goalie can fan on a shot from the blue line, so too can an official. Yeah, but one is correctable. One is imminently fixable. The other one is not. So that's ridiculous. Yeah, I think it's HD TV. I think more of us diehards watch on TV than go to the stadiums. Maybe that is why we perceive it a little bit more, that we're not at the games as much, and we're not 4 to 11 beers in when we see the play on our TV. I don't know, but I mean, yeah, HDification of things has really made it much clearer. And also, I don't know if you guys do this, but I know it makes me a nerd, but I love watching old games on YouTube and otherwise. And I don't mean like 3 years old. I mean, like, I go back to 1979. I watched this past summer the divisional round game in a Mile High when the Broncos beat the Steelers to get to the AFC title game. I love watching those, but it'll make you crazy how often the ball, like, you see the ball hit the ground on replay and they're just like, oh, well, what are you going to do? Like, the broadcasters just like bake it into the result. They're like, that ball hit the ground there. Like, you can see now in replay, his foot was clearly, one of the feet was clearly out of bounds. Like, all right, third down. Like, what? I mean, we got to stop this. Wait, no, you can't do it. Now, though, it's not just the HD, it's the ability to communicate. And I know we had cell phones before 5 years ago, but for real now, the NHL was the trailblazer with this. Like, get it out of the stadium because those human beings are susceptible to the cheers and the boos and otherwise from the tens of thousands of gathered people. They vend it out to New York or Toronto or wherever you want to do it. And the most vexing thing of all is how long it takes. We just accept like, hey, they have to meditate on this for like 6 minutes. We have to just stop and like look at it and the cutaways to that. Let's look at it again. It's like, we knew the result 17 seconds after the play completed. Yeah. Like you show one replay, like, oh, obviously the ball hit the ground. So, okay, let's go. Why is it not that fast? Why is it not like completed pass? And then it should be like, boop, 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 up. Incomplete pass. Okay, we're gonna go back. Like it should be that fast. Like, why isn't there somebody in New York or otherwise? Like, no, Freddie, you got that one wrong. That's that is incomplete. Okay, I'm being told. Okay, back it up. Like that should be the end of it. No one would be bothered by that. But this obtuse, like, they need more angles. It makes me. The whole thing is crazy.
It is. Sorry, Brandon. Go ahead.
No, go for it, Will.
I was gonna say it is really jarring. Because I watch a lot of old games too. And I did watch just this last offseason. So my dad was at that 1977 divisional round game with all the Tom Jackson interceptions. But watching those old games, it's so jarring when even back in the 70s, they could go back and replay a play 5 times. Like, you know, for not to pick on you, but like the Mike Renfro touchdown. And it's like we can watch that replay 5 times, but the refs can't. And they had replay, and then they took it away. And if you go to that Packers 49ers game where Terrell Owens catches the game-winning pass, Jerry Rice fumbles on that drive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they had replay, and they're like, no, we don't need this. And it totally changes the outcome of a season. It's unbelievable. I said the most vexing. I need to take that back because there are several elements that it's hard to choose the worst of them all. You're exactly right that even with replay, they still get it wrong. That is the looniest part of all. Unfortunately, well, now we know that like that the Steelers weren't offside on that field goal block. But like can't review everything. Like, and it's what are you talking about? We can't review. Why? Who decided that part? Like, well, then it would take too long. Not under the way I look at it. Like, it should be fast. And that's the looniest part of all. See, I'm not now of all. They're all terrible elements of it, but really, like that, it's not that there is. It just isn't stated loudly. No, if we're going to review anything, we're going to review all of it, and then they get distracted by jive like taunting and taunting thing, which is now dying down. We only got one this past week, and probably it will stop being called. I mean, or shame the devil if a game ever swings on it.
Yeah, for a spike. That was the spiked ball by Waller on the sideline, right?
It was like a refresher for the league. We didn't get one. We got to do one in tonight. But yeah, I really do think that for real, like think if your boss told you to do anything, like, hey, keep an eye out for this. Well, then you're obviously going to be incented to call that. You're not going to see something that's borderline and let it go because, old man Jones told me to call that if I see it. So, of course, you're going to be looking for it. And if you see anything closer, like, I'm going to curry favor with the boss man and throw a flag. Like, why are you dealing with that? You can't get the basic rules right. Now you're worrying about taunting with the octogenarians are evaluating whether or not that was directed at a foe was a move of celebration that was not involving it's all just so dumb.
The cherry on that key lime pie was, what a callback. The cherry on that was when the Monday Night Football broadcast crew tried to explain why emphasizing taunting isn't an old man rule. Like they literally tried to dispel it by saying, look, kids, this isn't just something the old guys want. I think they said like Kyle Shanahan was supportive of it or something. Like, okay, you got a problem if you're trying to get this message out like that.
Yeah, and the other issue, because head coaches, if they're under a certain age, they define hip and now. Don't they? I mean, like Well, I don't care. He's a pro football head coach. Like, I don't. His age is irrelevant to me. He's not going to define.
Yeah, they're all 60 years old. They're all 60 years old at heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And before we go on, the last thing about with like officiating is when a call is wrong, you have video access to that, not through like the game, but on Twitter, through every social platform where millions of people can see the bad call. Whereas like before social media, it was in the game and maybe you were lucky enough to see a highlight of it on ESPN. So now it's under a microscope all the time and everybody's got a clip available for it right away. And it just probably seems it's always probably been bad, right? But now you can see almost 20 bad calls this week alone. You're like, oh, dang, they got to fix that.
That's what makes it much more painful is the irony of everybody on planet Earth knows the truth except for the only person who has any say in what happens next.
Right.
That is loco.
Okay. Yeah. So what do you have, Will? Where do you want it to go next?
Yeah. So we already started with the Big Ben conversation. And
we started with Pamplemousse.
Yes.
We started with Pamplemousse. We worked our way to the Big Ben. It's a natural progression. So we,
Are you calling him a grapefruit face? Because that's not very nice.
Well, I could call him a key lime pie face, but that's not very nice either. Eventually, and I'm not saying this season, eventually the Steelers will move on, most likely after this season. There was the Aaron Rodgers talk last Sunday. There is, Russell Wilson potentially out there. And I know you've talked about this, your quarterback carousel. There's a ton of rookies too. And like you said, a few of them will be first rounders, as always. Give me your preferred replacement for Ben Roethlisberger and the most likely replacement.
I mean, the Aaron Rodgers stuff, I was in, and not like some seer to have said that I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be great in 2010. Obviously, he was well on his way, and they held on to him during the Brett Favre melodrama and all that when that was going down, and first round draft pick and everything. But I did say in 2010, for what it's worth, early in that season, he will retire as the greatest quarterback of all time. Now, Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady and all the Lombardis maybe got in the way of that, but I think the spirit of that it still kind of holds up. That he, up until the arrival of Patrick Mahomes, at least, was doing things that was like, man, I've never seen a QB make some of those throws, the total package and otherwise. So Aaron Rodgers would be great in Pittsburgh. I also don't love I know the Broncos are a proud franchise and everything, and I don't love the mercenary element of like an old guy who's achieved great things elsewhere, like being the savior for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know that's curmudgeonly, and we're deep into the free agency years. I don't love how that hits my ear. Like, he came back and did one great year, but like it would be cool though. I get it. I do think the larger point is that over the last half decade or so, or maybe starting with Peyton, it opened up the possibilities of QBs moving around. Like, you just didn't see that very much. They were washed when they started the move, Johnny Unitas and more recent examples than that. Joe Namath, and those are probably the two. But Peyton maybe did start the trend of or maybe it was Brett Favre, whoever is responsible for it. Yes. Now in the 21st century, you can bounce around. I think Russell Wilson is playing his last season in Seattle. I think Aaron Rodgers could go to Denver and make you guys the favorite or among the favorites in the AFC. I think they would have been this year if you would have gotten him. I'm still surprised that didn't happen, and I'm still curious why the Broncos. I still have to think that they thought they were getting Rodgers, because it makes no sense that they didn't take Justin Fields. Unless one of their scouts was like, here's what I know about Justin Fields, and this is why we definitely can't take. It makes no sense on face, except that you could say, but it was such a slow burn. Like, on draft night, it was like, oh, well, they're not going to take a QB because they're getting Aaron Rodgers. And then weeks turned into months, and it was like, I guess the Broncos just aren't getting anybody. It's like Teddy B or Drew Lock. I'd love to see. My idea is that the Steelers should offer a second round, maybe a third rounder, and see if they can do it and help the Packers out from under their current melodrama and say, give us Jordan Love. Then Aaron Rodgers feels happy. Like, see, we made things right, Aaron. You didn't like that. And now we made him go away. Now stay with us for the next 2 or 3 years, please. Now, I had Jason Luck-and-Four on the show earlier this week, and he said, I just don't think that's gonna resolve itself, which is good news for you, unless it's bad news for you, because Rodgers could also go to Vegas, and then that would really do. Imagine if the Broncos are in a division with against Rodgers and Herbert and Mahomes. But then Luck-and-Four said, I wouldn't be surprised if you're right about Russell Wilson, and then maybe he goes to Seattle. Rodgers. Anyway, the carousel is going to spin. In the meantime, we talk about amnesia, and like year to year, you forget that it was bad. Like the amnesia everybody suffers from every time in college football season, early-ish on, like 4 or 5 games in, the pundits announce, like, I just don't see anybody worth a first-round pick in this QB class. It happens every year. Now, there's one guy like Trevor Lawrence, if you have a once-in-a-5-year period, like, well, he'll go. But after Trevor Lawrence, I don't know. Justin Fields didn't look good against Indiana the other day. I don't know if there's any QB. But jump to Trey Lance 3, Zach Wilson 2, people moving up, Mac Jones and all that. That happens every year. And maybe there isn't a Trevor Lawrence in this group, but spoiler alert, there will be 2 to 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round, just as there are all the time, because the operation now in high school, in junior high and high school, and the college offenses now all, accelerate what a quarterback can do. It wasn't that long ago. I was in my lifetime. I remember they drafted him. Good. He'll be good in 3 or 4 years when we finally put him in as our starter. Like, that's just not the way it operates anymore. So from that gang that's out there, like, I like how Matt Corral looks, I guess, because he runs well and has a big arm, and those two things lend themselves to pro football these days. So I guess I'll say Matt Corral, because the sweet spot is, of course, a good quarterback on his rookie deal. So you can address all the luxury items on the roster that you want to go and get. That's why Russell Wilson and Colin Kaepernick and the Seahawks and Niners were great for those 4 years, because that's exactly the way they were able to succeed. They had 2 high-end quarterbacks, but both making relative peanuts, and they were loaded rosters otherwise.
And I think one thing that I've learned from this year, especially watching Trevor Lawrence on the Jags, Zach Wilson with the Jets, Justin Fields with Matt Nagy and the Bears, it's so important to get a rookie quarterback on a good team. And we see it with Lamar Jackson too. So I think the Steelers, obviously, you can say it like they're an offensive lineman away, they're a quarterback away. They're a good team.
Good organization, good team.
Quarterback play. They're a great organization, one of the top 4 or 5 in the league. I think a rookie quarterback in the 15 to 20s is that's Ben Roethlisberger all over again.
I completely doable too. The hand wringing, it's that people just don't pay attention. I guess people are stuck in their brain. Again, amnesia, like we talk about, is the idea he was a dude. Bradshaw, after he retired, it was a long wait till we got Roethlisberger. Everybody forget about that. Bobby Brister was no good, and Mark Malone and all them dudes was in Cordell. Dude, we had to wait a long time till we got a QB. But it's the good news is it's not 1987 anymore. It's
and you're in the AFC
tons of good quarterbacks
every other year with Cordell Stewart and Neil O'Donnell and whoever, basically.
Yeah. They made it work a few times.
Precisely. Plus, you got the Browns are going to, in all likelihood, unless things really go south, they're gonna sign Baker Mayfield. That's probably not ultimately good. He's a middle class QB, but they'll keep him. And the Ravens, are going to keep Lamar Jackson for $40+ million. And so far I've been wrong about him this year. It isn't that I don't acknowledge his individual greatness, but man, it's diminishing returns with the pass catchers, and the offensive line is garbage. I mean, so far so good. I'm waiting for that team to come back to earth in terms of record a little bit. I don't think they're that good.
The Ravens.
I know against you guys, he specifically was really good last week. I don't know that it's sustainable if, again, there are probably 5 or 6 human beings who you can pay like $40+ million and have a good solid roster all the way around him. I don't think that's going to be true for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore or Baker Mayfield in Cleveland once they sign those big deals and consume a greater percentage of the cap.
Do you think it helps the Ravens since Lamar's negotiating his own contract? Do you think there's any chance they get a better deal because of that?
I don't know how that works. Like, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd be terrible. I'm always like, I'd like you to maybe give me this much.
I'm scared signing.
I can see why you wouldn't
deals.
Want to, though, because I see, I know what I did. I remember what happened in Vegas in week 1 when I fumbled the game away. So I get it if you have to knock a couple million off for that. And I remember how I played in the playoff game. Yeah, that wasn't good. Probably should knock another 40. That's how I would approach things as a self-doubting loser. But yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. Nobody involves me in the big budget negotiations. If Lamar Jackson's a savvy negotiator, I guess that could work out well. Or maybe they try to get one over on him. But I guess if you're the Rams, it's an interesting thing. I hadn't really considered it. Now that you asked it, though, it would be bad if the Ravens pulled one over on Lamar. Because it's not like that'll just sit in a vacuum forever. People will learn the terms of the contract, and then they'll be like, "Hey, Lamar, they screwed you, man," and then that will be bad. So, like the for their own sake, the Ravens kind of need to give them a good fair deal, or else then Lamar will be PO'd, and that's not good.
And you brought up Baker Mayfield and the Browns, and it kind of harkens back to a couple situations, like Alex Smith with the Chiefs, and then. I think if the Browns don't learn from the Jared Goff contract with the Rams, I think they're crazy because they are top to bottom and they have a middle-class quarterback. You're totally right. A guy you can win with and win a playoff game or 2 with. I don't even know if they can get to the Super Bowl, but the ceiling is like Matthew Stafford level Rams for them with the right quarterback. The ceiling right now is probably about where they were last year, maybe a little bit more. I think they would be crazy to repeat the same exact mistake. And of course you can get off of a contract, but if the Rams had, if they had pulled the plug a little bit earlier, and I think that's what Sean McVay really wanted to do, but no one's really done it before. And I think if Kevin Stefanski or whoever the GM is bold enough to become the first to have, a serviceable quarterback and say, nope, we're not giving you a contract. We want better. I think that's really going to do wonders for
Aaron
them.
Rodgers to the Browns. Heard it here first.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Ooh, that's a fun one. I mean, listen, if Russell Wilson moves, also there are other names that are middle-class QBs that, Danny Dimes is for instance, has played mostly pretty well this season.
Yeah.
But if things, the purgatory, I guess you don't want is for them to, wind up with like 8 wins. It's like, well, look, we're building something still with Danny Dimes, and Gettleman keeps his gig. And then he drafted Dimes, so he's incented to keep him and make that work. You want it to go like real south so that it's like, we gotta move on from this. But then of course, like you mentioned, what we associate with good franchises is stability. And, and so if you get too, like the Giants are veering in that direction of like, they just keep turning things over too often. So that balance, but anyway, but Dimes is like a guy who, we could make a case is a decent starter for you next year if you went and got him, but he'll be out there probably. Off the top of my head, I can't think of all the names that are their deal's going to be up and decisions will have to be made about that.
Teddy Bridgewater, probably.
Teddy B.
It's why I didn't love the Teddy signing, and I've always rooted for Bridgewater. And I was like, I think this team if they're not drafting a QB in the draft, which they didn't, you need to just either tank with Drew Lock or see if he turns into who you thought he was going to be. So I didn't even like when they started Teddy, but then you win a couple games with him and you're like, okay, now all I'm thinking about is getting to the playoffs, which I think they can do with Teddy, which negates what I said in the offseason is like, then you're just stuck with a quarterback who might be able to get you to the playoffs, might not. And you're in this weird spot where you can never really draft the top tier replacement, or maybe like just if what Will's saying is true, like you're in the middle there and you do find a good rookie QB and you bring him into a good team. It is purgatory. And it's definitely what it's felt like being a Broncos fan since Manning left. And that really changed the Broncos' future because they won the Super Bowl with him in his final season, even though he wasn't great. So they're not in a good position to draft his replacement right away. You have Trevor Siemian in there, then you go after Paxton Lynch. So the Steelers, it might be in their best interest for Ben to officially be washed. Just say he's bad and they finish as one of the worst teams in the league, because then they're in a prime position to get their next guy.
If they don't, they're rightly at this point, in my opinion, and talk to me after the Broncos game, but they're rightly, I mean, Urban Meyer is loco when he's like, hey, we're only a game out in that division. That division is abject garbage. I said it all the time, that the 2021 AFC South would be the 2020 NFC East of pro football, and that's where it's headed. By the way, I think it'd be super funny if the Jags beat the Titans this week, because then that division is the biggest joke, even more so than last year's East or the NFC West that was won with 7 wins, whenever that was. Yeah, I hear you, but if I kind of get where the rhetoric that Tomlin and everybody is spitting right now, like if we win 2 games before the bye, then come out and beat the Browns, unlikely these things, a 3-game win streak. But if they do that, then they are in the mix, rightly. And if they don't do that, look at the rest of their schedule. Once they get through their last 6 weeks or so, are under the best of circumstances, you're like, boy, they better be dominant if they're going to even go 500. They're going to wind up with a lousy record. If they don't reel off a few coming up here, they're doomed to have an awful record. No matter what. I hear you about Teddy B, though, because I always think about, on one hand, it's so dispiriting. It's why I also said, Roethlisberger had them over the barrel. They had to pay him. If he's coming back, if he's not going to retire, they're going to lose that $20 million. So you roll with him, because you can't say, well, we cut him and we're going with Mason Rudolph instead, because go say that to Cam Hayward's face. I'm in my 11th year. The season's starting with Mason Rudolph. No, I don't think I'll show this year then. If that's where if you're a Broncos fan, or if you're a team and you're like, Teddy B's our QB, you're not winning the Super Bowl. Right now that you're not going to win the Super Bowl. Let's have a frank conversation. But you didn't come into the season thinking you had any shot at the Super Bowl. So I try to counsel fans in this way all the time. Everything doesn't have to turn into a dynasty for it to be worthwhile. You got the 2015 Lombardi. That was nice. And so maybe for the next half decade, you scuffled a bit. I think every Broncos fan would make that trade still, right? Nobody's like, I would give it back. I think Milwaukee Bucks fans, that Eastern Conference is a mess. The idea that Giannis should now they should win another title, or it's a little unset. No, you can win one title once every 25 years, and that should keep most fan bases warm. What you don't want is, like we talk about the purgatory, to talk about the Western Conference in the NBA with the Denver Nuggets specifically. They were in that weird purgatory of they're never going to beat the Lakers. They're not going to win 4 out of 7 against the Showtime Lakers, but they're not bad enough to ever get a great player. So what are they doing then? Really? My point is, I don't have a point. But I see the mind games that it plays on you. I guess the bottom line is you kind of don't want to be a Yankees fan, and not just because they lost to the Red Sox in the 1-game playoff, but because if the premise is like, well, we better win it every year, then like, well, that's not fun at all. That wouldn't be fun to be rooting for that team. I've been a Penguins fan for the last, since Sidney Crosby got there. Every time it's like they lost a playoff series. How dare they? Disappointment. It's like Derrick Henry in high school getting tackled even once. Like underachievement. You got tackled by somebody like my size? Well, that's unacceptable.
Yeah, you lost a little bit on the Nuggets thing because I'm actually a Sacramento Kings fan, and
I forgot. Right?
Yeah, that one playoff game, and that'll keep me warm for the next 25 years.
They're always like what at 9? The Kings?
9 would be probably the best season we've had in years.
Oh, Peja, hit the rim. You're 17 feet from it, man. You're an NBA sharpshooter. You airballed it. We don't talk about that when we talk about chokes. I feel like that we hear too much about Scott Norwood and barely a mention about Peja. But that may be, given the stakes there, that may be the biggest choke. What's a bigger choke than that one?
Well,
he was their sharpshooter.
It's been totally forgotten because they think it ended on game. Most people think it was game 6 and then that's it. And we go back home to Sacramento to, probably the most rabid crowd of all time with the cowbells and all that. Yeah. And I think they shot probably like 2 for 31 from 3 in that game and still made it to overtime and lost. Yeah. Outrageous.
Crazy. I'm trying to think of what was a Vanderjack with a makeable field goal, hitting somebody in a luxury box at about the 20-yard line. Like what the hell just happened to you, man? I guess that would be up there.
Probably Billy Cundiff.
Yep.
That one, because of the Lee Evans drop, that one kind of gets forgotten a little bit. Or maybe Lee Evans. Maybe that was the big choke.
Yeah, that was sad. I felt sad for him because he wanted to celebrate so bad. Like, all you have to do is just do this instead of like,
Yeah, that's basically
for the Mike Renfro remark you made earlier. I forgot to scold you for that. That was disgraceful to do that to a guest on your program. To bring me on and assault me like that was not nice.
Well,
I'm sorry about that.
We're going to get out of here, and I think I need your official prediction for this Broncos-Steelers game.
I gave it to you, 5-3, Pittsburgh Steelers.
5-3, Steelers win. I guess, I haven't watched enough of the Steelers. Are they just choosing not to try and run frequently, or is it more of an issue they can't run? Because the Broncos have the reverse where they run really well, and then when they need to keep running, they don't.
The best that they've run the ball was in Green Bay this past week, which is saying something because Kenny Clark the week before, as much as you go chapter to chapter, like, well, Kenny Clark was dominant the week before, so they should not be able to run with him in the middle there this week, but they did. So maybe that's a ray of sunshine for them. But I mean, for the most part, it's funny because, like Roethlisberger stinks and they can't run the ball. And it's like Roethlisberger's at one end of his career. Najee Harris is at the start of his. And the thing that they have in common is, I mean, like, this must stop or else they're going to be broken in half because the offensive line can't block anybody. I bet you they try a little bit more this week. 16 rushes this past week. But for what it's worth, Najee Harris is getting the holy crap kicked out of him. That's the way Tomlin does things. He did it with Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, and everybody else. Like he is not sort of like running back by committee. He's not that guy. He just runs them into the ground. So but Najee Harris looks good so far. So I do think with all the focus on Roethlisberger costing them games and everything else, they'll do everything they possibly can. Unless you guys get up a couple scores, I think they're just going to keep trying to feed Najee.
Well, they'll be tough against the Broncos defense, but 5-3, book it.
There you have it.
Cool. That'll end it.